Welcome to Supply Chain Partners Coffee Break with Unchained Solutions, streaming live from LinkedIn and YouTube. I'm Dr. Sharon Grant, the founder of Supply Chain Partners. Thank you for spending your coffee break with us today. Soon I will introduce our Gold Partner Expert member, Unchained Solutions, and we'll find out more about Unchained Solutions and their excellent offer for Supply Chain Partners members. And then I'll provide a brief tour of Supply Chain Partners marketplace and professional community. Supply Chain Partners is a multi-award-winning global business and supply chain marketplace and professional community. Your Supply Chain Partners membership provides you and your team with access to experts, innovative solutions, exclusive resources, member offers, and coaching, education, and networking events to accelerate your business, supply chain, and professional goals. We help our individual members and corporate members to find innovative solutions, and we help our expert members and business support members to promote their business, and we help our event partner members to promote their industry events. Our expert members enjoy an all-in-one business development and marketing solution and can also deliver and attend our online education and networking events. We promote our expert members to our supply chain partners and our growing global audience of over 38,000 business and supply chain professionals. Today, we are showcasing our Gold Partner Expert member, Unchained Solutions. I'd now like to introduce Dr. Stephen Morse, the CEO of Unchained Solutions. Thanks for joining us today, Stephen.
It's always a pleasure, Sharon. It's been a little while, but I really enjoy our sessions together and the way you interview and the way you bring out the important message. So thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. So today we will unpack the recommendations made to strengthen the Australian Modern Slavery Act. But firstly, Stephen, could you please provide an overview of Unchained Solutions?
Sure. So Unchained Solutions, we're a professional services firm. We are technically also a social enterprise in that we give a portion of our profits to those entities that are working directly with survivors of modern slavery. So we're a consultancy that focuses on modern slavery risk, and we work with organisations to help them to comply with both the Commonwealth Modern Slavery Act as well as the New South Wales Modern Slavery Amendment Act of 2021. We have a turnkey solution comprising strategy, analysis, training, documents, and research. And within those solution areas, we have a range of services which we can bundle together and work with our clients in a bespoke way, depending on their needs. If they're a large corporation, they're a SME, for example, we have a toolkit for them as well. And really, it's a way of actually working with our clients based on their exact needs and their maturity with the legislation and what they need to focus on in the short term as well as the long term.
Great. So let's now unpack the recommendations made to strengthen the Australian Modern Slavery Act. So how has 2023 proven to be a big year for modern slavery due diligence?
Well, it's been a big year, and it's been great to see that after the Modern Slavery Act was implemented back in 2018-19, 3 years down the track through a second consultation process, a number of recommendations have been put forward. They have been tabled with Parliament, and we're expecting Parliament to actually respond to those because they were put into the lower house several months ago. And really, it's a way of what's really happened, and the backstory to this is really just looking really at the effectiveness of the current legislation and really seeing what some of those gaps have been. And I think one of the key gaps has really been around asking the market really to drive the demand, to drive the urgency around that. And there's been some value in that in terms of letting the market, letting businesses really sort themselves out. But what we have seen over time really is just rather than a race to the top, there's really been a race to the middle. And so there's really been some correction that needs to occur. One of the key weaknesses of the legislation is really its clout. The legislation has relied on reputational risk to drive the implementation. And so one of the key recommendations that's come out is really introducing penalties for non-compliance with the statutory reporting requirements, because I think what's happened, and it's been noted in several studies that have been conducted over the past couple of years, is that companies have, and many have been quite good at this, very sophisticated at times in sort of setting up the right governance framework and risk management framework, or integrating that into their existing frameworks. And sort of just kind of, sort of taking the notion of reasonable steps into a more kind of, well, we'll just do the minimum. And that, I think that's kind of led to a race to the middle. And in some pockets and some corners, really not much activity at all. So not having that kind of clout where government can actually sort of put the pressure on, I think has led to a sort of a lack of urgency. And so one of the key recommendations then is really to provide, introduce some penalties for the non-compliance. And we're not sure at this stage what those penalties will be and how they'll be enforced over time. Another recommendation that's been put forward has to do with the lowering of the threshold. So currently the threshold for compliance is, well, it's around 100 million in annual consolidated revenue. And really then what that has meant, though, is that only certain sort of pool of companies, those at the top end, big end of town, have been mandated to report. And there's a recommendation to lower that to 50 million. I think from where I sit, and I think if the urgency had sort of continued and the race to the top had continued, and the appropriate sort of pressure in a collaborative sense had been applied through the market, then we would have seen a knock-on effect down the market, which was much stronger than it has been. And so I think to then lower the threshold to 50 million, which is comparable to other legislation that's coming forward. For example, in New Zealand, the threshold that's being introduced in the anti-slavery legislation there is immediately lower. It means it will capture a bigger pool of companies who are mandated to report, and coupled with penalties for non-compliance, we will see therefore an uplift, hopefully, in terms of the compliance mechanism. Another key feature around the Modern Slavery Act has been around what companies have needed to report on. Criterion 3 of the legislation is about identifying risk, and criteria 4 has been about actions taken with that information. So it's about transparency and responsibility. And then criterion 5 has been really just sort of outlining how you're going to measure the effectiveness rather than demonstrating how effective your actions have been. And I think that whole apparatus around frameworks and processes and what we're doing around identification, being transparent, responsibility in terms of remedy and grievance mechanisms, and through to measuring impact, I think the recommendation there is to strengthen that due diligence system so that organizations really need to not just report on maybe what they're doing in the space, but really discussing in greater detail what it is that they're doing, what steps they've taken, and how effective that is. So don't just talk about the actions you've taken, but actually talk about how deep you've taken those actions, what you have report, what you do need to report, and really discuss, I suppose, be more transparent around some of the weaknesses of that approach.
Right. Well, there's quite a few recommendations. So 30 have been put forward. So could you please provide an overview of the top recommendations that you see that, say, SMEs should be looking at?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah. So that's 30, and I haven't gone through the 30. I've really just pulled out sort of some of the top 2 or 3. I suppose the other recommendation that I didn't mention has to do with the proposal to have an anti-slavery commissioner akin to what is already in place for the state of New South Wales. And I think that's also going to be a key item for the legislation, in the sense that what we've found, particularly with Dr. James Cocaine in New South Wales, is that there's a very clear person who's actually driving the conversation. And I think one of the key weaknesses in terms of what's happening at the Commonwealth level is sort of this sort of sense there's this nameless, faceless bureaucracy behind the reporting mechanism that really means that there's no one really driving the conversation at the federal level. And I think having a commissioner in place that isn't independent from Parliament, but can actually speak to Parliament and make recommendations that perhaps even drive some of these recommendations, which I think is probably what's going to happen, that the commissioner will come in first, and then the other recommendations will be implemented through that office. I think we'll see a greater conversation at a federal level than what has actually occurred. When it comes to SMEs who fit within this B2B, business to business supply space, I think what we've noticed in terms of our engagement with small business is really a shift in what they've been asked to do over the last 4 years. So, for example, back in 2019, mistakenly, a lot of small businesses were just asked to sort of sign a statutory declaration declaring that they're slave-free, which was a big no, that's not appropriate, because no one can actually say that for certainty. A lot of SMEs were issued quite randomly, and many like a self-reporting, like a self-assessment questionnaire, and it's been proven, depending on how that sort of tool is being used, there's been really quite ineffective in terms of actually getting the response rate and really getting the detail and the information that the company that's issuing that SAQ is wanting from those suppliers. So also probably in that back, a few years ago, then there was also really a requirement for SMEs to have some sort of policy or position statement broadly on human rights, specifically on modern slavery, to state what they're against, that they're actually, they take a stand against modern slavery, and they're cooperating with a reporting entity who they're doing business with. That's shifted over the last 4 years, and what we've seen is really add-ons to that basic requirement, where there's been a greater need for training, that at least awareness training, but more, I think, around proper education, so that companies and suppliers can actually understand what they need to do. There's been some really good practices in there where the reporting entity has actually taken responsibility and demonstrated some leadership in that space. So actually provided the training, provided the space for suppliers to actually build the capacity, and not just expect suppliers just to sort of step up. Not all suppliers and particularly small businesses have the capacity or the resources or the know-how really to be in alignment with the reporting requirements. And so it's really important that the reporting entities demonstrate leadership by actually not just expecting suppliers to step up, but actually providing the means for them to do so. So that's a much more collaborative rather than a fierce competitive landscape. What we have noticed most recently in terms of those companies that are doing some work with local government, particularly in the state of New South Wales, now that the New South Wales Modern Slavery Act is in play, we have local councils and government corporations and entities who are now needing to step up. And we are seeing some of the sort of mistakes that were made originally back in 2019 appearing through some of those engagements where local councils are asking suppliers to sort of sign on the dotted line that they're actually a slave-free, which is, again, not an appropriate approach. But we are actually seeing overall, not just from local government, but from big corporates, that rather than just having the need for a policy or filling this self-assessment questionnaire, we now need you to have a mechanism in place. You need to sort of be looking at your own suppliers. You need to actually have a policy and a commitment to ethical sourcing, and you need to actually show us what you're doing over a period of time. Maybe have your own strategy, some KPIs there to actually address the risks among those entities that you're buying from, and actually be part of the broader due diligence program. So it's not just a question of sign here or tick this box or fill in this form, but actually you need to be active in the space. And I trust and I hope that those demands are sort of followed through with some capacity building for suppliers to do that.
Right, thank you. Now, how will these recommendations impact the management of supply chains?
Well, I think it's really becoming quite important for those who are in supply chain management, those in procurement, to actually be skilled in the identification of risk and skilled in actually making sure that when they're actually sourcing goods and services or managing suppliers, that they're not just concerned about issues around quality or the bottom line, pricing and the speed, the turnaround of delivery, that actually there is a greater concern and an integration really of matters relating to business and human rights, as well as the environmental considerations. So the notion of quality, if you like, is kind of broadened, that the quality of products is not just around its functionality, but also how the product is being made and by whom, and what are some of the issues around emissions and also waste when it comes to the development of those products. So there's a lot more that needs to be done in the supplier engagement piece or the supply management piece to ensure that products that are delivered are not, the strength of the product, not just in terms of the quality of the product, but actually that the product's been made sustainably and the product has been made with due diligence done in the area of human rights.
Right. So how does Unchained Solutions help organisations to navigate these recommendations and manage modern slavery due diligence?
Sure. Well, we have, as I said, we have a range of solution areas, and I think that sort of the two key solution areas. The first is strategy. So we're very keen to make sure that organisations start from with the right solid foundation, either through our strategic framework review process or through our gaps analysis process and the development of an action roadmap. So having looked at their internal and their enablers in the areas of governance, procurement, supplier, recruitment, for example, external engagement, that they actually begin to understand, what is the current state of play for the organization? What is it that we need to sort of do in-house around our own policies and procedures and mechanisms to make sure that we're not contributing or doing anything intentional around increasing the risk of modern slavery or other human rights violations. So really it's about work that we do with companies to help them to strategize, to do that internal analysis and really set up some very key action items that they need to sort of meet over, maybe a year or 2 years or even up to 5 years, actions that they can then that are not separate to business as usual, but actions that actually really they can integrate into their normal practices and improve those practices over time, so that they're effectively, in a sense, it's not about just being targeted on addressing modern slavery, but it's actually about having the right practices in place to begin with, responsible business practices to actually drive the way they do business. And in the process of that, then all those issues around human rights violations and the environment are dealt with at times. So it's not something which is exceptional, it's something which is more integrated into how we do business.
Well, it's an excellent turnkey solution that you offer. So now online learning is an excellent way for organisations to gain a better understanding about how to manage their modern slavery responsibilities. Your new modern slavery e-learning modules are proving to be quite popular. So what do these modules cover?
Sure. So we've got two streams of e-learning. One is sort of industry agnostic. The other is around healthcare, and I'll just speak to the industry agnostic one. So we have 6 modules which we sell both individually and as a package, and they can be sold individually as in one, or we can actually scale them under an enterprise-wide agreement. The modules really are structured in a way to cover the criteria of the Modern Slavery Act. Module 1 is our most popular because it's the general awareness. So what is the issue of modern slavery? What is the Modern Slavery Act about? And really then focuses on what is the personal response about being a conscious consumer. And we find that with our learnings, that if there's actually a sort of a key takeaway, something which is tangible, it's really helpful for users, because one of the issues around modern slavery is that there's a lot of intangibles. And it's very easy to get lost in this very complex human rights violation, which has touch points with other impact areas. So having a clear call to action is a key feature of the modules, particularly module 1 around being a conscious consumer. As we progress through modules 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, we then start looking more at skills-based modules for key stakeholders, whether they're in supply chain management, procurement, site management, commercial teams, or recruitment, for example. So they provide more information around issues around sustainable procurement and ethical sourcing, how to start mapping, categorizing your suppliers and mapping them and creating a risk profile for those entities in your value chain. There's a module around policy and governance and actually what kind of policies you need and how go about actually developing those policies. And that can be accompanied with the templates that we also have, a number of templates that people can purchase as well. Module 5 is around impact measurement. So how to actually create a logic model and apply a logic model and set the right goals, inputs and outputs, outcomes and long-term impacts for a range of actions that will actually go towards helping you measure what you're doing and how effective it is with modern slavery. And then 6 is really looking at the bigger picture around going beyond compliance and really looking at the broader scope of what due diligence means and how it is that we're actually going to do some real serious work in this space that is, beyond the foundation steps, looking beyond the foundations.
Excellent. So let's now discuss your very special training and consultation offer. Could you please explain your member offer for our supply chain partners members and what they can expect?
Sure. So under what we can provide today is if you be in touch with us, we can give you access to our SME toolkit and access to a module. If you get in touch with us, we can give you a taster of that so that you can actually access that model and set up a 15-minute call with me to discuss your current needs and what you might need to be doing in this space. We know there's a growing concern around, particularly for smaller entities, around what they're being asked to do and they don't quite understand. So we want to make that available to you today, access to our module as a taster and a 15-minute consultation.
Thank you very much, Stephen. That's an excellent offer. Now, I'll share my screen to show our audience how to locate your offer on Supply Chain Partners Marketplace, and I'll provide a brief tour. Stephen, thank you very much for joining us today from Unchained Solutions. We are very grateful for your special offer for Supply Chain Partners members.
It's a pleasure, and we're here to address this issue and really help companies to make an impact, to make their own impact.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Okay, so I'll just share my screen. Okay, so this is our Supply Chain Partners Marketplace and Professional Community, and you can come here to supplychainpartners.co. Now, I'll go to our special offer by Unchained Solutions, and so through resources, you can go to member offers, and when you go to member offers, it'll show you these offers, and it's under the training, so Unchained e-learning module 1, engaging with the issue of modern slavery. And so when you open up that training offer, you'll also have the consultation that comes with that offer. And there's also a discount here as well for Supply Chain Partners members. Now, when we go to Unchained Solutions storefront, then we go to the storefront and we can see a lot more information about Unchained Solutions. And as you come down the page, you'll look at all of their credentials and you'll find out more about their services and their turnkey solution. So that provides all the information there where it goes across strategy, analysis, training, documents, and also the research area. Now, when you have a look at Unchained Solutions services, you'll find out more about their services, and you can go through all of that information there, which is the turnkey solution, and then the training opportunities as well. And that's all of the 6-pack of 6 e-learning modules there as well. And also, Dr. Stephen Morse is also a speaker, and these are the various topics that Stephen speaks about. You can have a look at this article. It's an insights paper. And then this podcast. So I'm going to be mentioning that podcast soon. And with the member library, so if you're a member of Supply Chain Partners, you can get access to all of these videos that Stephen has provided previously. And so Stephen has been speaking at our virtual summits and in our educational webinars and fireside chats. So you'll have access to all of that information there. And now let's also explore our podcast. So you'll find the podcast here under media, then podcast. And as you come down here, our listeners span across 19 countries, and you'll find us on all the favorite podcast channels. And so when we come to Unchained Solutions podcast, so this is combating modern slavery risk in global supply chains with Unchained Solutions. You can watch the video, or you can listen to the podcast. You can also listen to the podcast on your favorite podcast channels. And here is a breakdown here of what we go through. So we focus on what are the key challenges, and then we look at real life client examples and lessons learned. And then we actually take you for a walk through the turnkey solution to provide a bit more explanation in depth about that solution. So that's an excellent podcast. Totally recommend that you have a look at that podcast. Now, when you also come here onto our marketplace, you can also explore events. So what events that we've got coming up. Now, we record everything. We put all of our recordings in our member library. And so you can see all the different recordings that we have here and the previous recordings that we've done with Unchained Solutions. And then we have other Unchained Solutions events coming up as well. So we've got a fireside chat coming up, and you can participate in that fireside chat, and that's at the end of this month. So totally recommend you coming to that. We also have an executive roundtable in October focusing on the SMEs. And then we have another executive roundtable looking at things from more of a strategic level. And then another coffee break later in the year. So we invite you to subscribe to our Supply Chain Partners newsletters, and you can do so by going to subscribe. Our newsletters are very comprehensive, and so there's not only our newsletters you can subscribe to, but you can also subscribe to and follow our podcasts, follow us on social media, and our 2 big LinkedIn newsletters. And you can also join our Inner Circle group and get the inside scoop from our Supply Chain Partners members. We invite you to join Supply Chain Partners. Now we have more information here about joining, and say if you'd like to join, there's options to join as an individual or corporate. So this is for if you're looking for supply chain and business solutions, if you're looking for professional development and career opportunities. But if you'd like to promote your business, then have a look at the expert membership or the business support membership. The expert membership provides you with access to promote your business very broadly across our members and also our global audience, whereas our business support membership, that's focused on providing support to our expert members. So all the various support that you can help them to grow their business. So we're coming to the end of our Supply Chain Partners coffee break with Unchained Solutions. So be sure to take advantage of Unchained Solutions modern slavery training and consultation offer for Supply Chain Partners members. So you need to join to become a member to take advantage of this offer. So we welcome you to join our professional community at Supply Chain Partners and take advantage of our member offers, our exclusive resources, our online education and networking events, and so much more. So bye for now, and thank you very much, Stephen, and we look forward to seeing you at our next online event. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.